So, hello everyone, and welcome to this second episode of our series of webinars dedicated to mastering AI tools for IP lawyers. We are very happy to welcome for this second episode dedicated to patent Bastian, who is a legal tech enthusiast and a long time enthusiast on AI tools and specifically in the patent field, and he will teach us how to master LLM on premise and how to install it and then use it to write and help you writing patent claims. Do you want to add something, Bastian?
Oh, perfect introduction. So thanks for that. I think I will tackle all the points then in the main part of the webinar.
Could you just tell us in the chat if you hear us well, and then we can begin?
There's one person saying hello in the chat, so it seems to work.
Awesome.
Okay, very cool.
Perfect. Should I just start?
Perfect. Yes.
All right. Great. So thanks for having me, first of all. Great to be here, and great to have the opportunity to talk about this exciting topic. So maybe a little bit of about my backstory and why I'm talking about this topic today. So my name is Bastian. I'm a patent attorney, a European and a German patent attorney, based in Munich. And my technical background is computer science. So in my day-to-day patent attorney work, I deal with inventions for software and for digital innovations day in, day out. And a large part of that is also involves AI these days, as a matter of fact. So novel applications of AI and really novel foundational innovations within artificial intelligence. But that's my day-to-day patent attorney job. So that's not the topic of today's seminar. And then I'm also a big computer nerd. So as I said, I studied computer science. So I've been a computer nerd ever since. Basically started with an Amiga 500 back in the days when we didn't have internet. Crazy times back then. And then when ChatGPT first came out, this was in November 2022. So roughly 1.5 years ago. I was thinking, cool. A nice, exciting new tool available. So I tried it out, and I was immediately fascinated by the linguistic proficiency of ChatGPT. And let's say this comes in two parts, so to say. So on the one hand, the ability to understand human text and then to produce text in a human-like quality. So that was really fascinating for me. And so I wondered, well, what do I do as a patent attorney in my day-to-day job? Well, I have to understand text, language, right? And I'm producing text also. So I was thinking about why shouldn't we patent attorneys also take advantage of tools like ChatGPT and use that to assist in patent drafting? Because that's what the task is, right? When you're drafting a patent, you have to understand the invention, which is typically embodied in an invention description in text, and then you have to produce a patent application, which is also a document. So it was an immediate idea for me to use ChatGPT. But then, of course, ChatGPT comes with this confidentiality issues, right? You have to send your data, your information to some server where you never really know how the data is handled. And so I started looking into alternatives, into alternative generative AI models. And that's what a big part of today's webinar will be about. So I think I have to enlarge the presentation, right? So you can see that. So let's see, what are we gonna look at today? Brief agenda. So as I'm informed, the webinar will run 1 hour, right? Until 12:30. So I will try to, okay, good. I will try to have maybe 45 minutes or 40 minutes now remaining for my presentation, and then we can have the remaining time for an open Q&A in case you have any questions. That being said, we can also do it interactively. So if you have any pressing questions during my presentation, don't hesitate. Just write it into the chat, or I don't know. I think there's also this hand raising feature here in the bottom of the platform here.
Yes, and there is also
a
space dedicated to question.
Exactly.
Aside from the chat.
Perfect. Okay, so you can ask whatever you have on your mind, and I will try to answer all the questions as far as I can answer them. Let's see. It's an evolving field, so yeah, nobody's a real expert, I guess. It's all a big playing field. So the agenda roughly is divided in 3 parts. In the first part, I want to give you a brief intro into generative AI and also how to install offline LLMs. Sounds like rocket science, but you don't have to have a computer science degree. It's really, really easy if you've seen it, how it's done. Then we will really look into the meat and potatoes of today's webinar, let's say, patent drafting with generative AI. I will show you some little demo I have prepared, a glimpse into the things, how I use those models during my patent drafting work. And then we will see that a big part of the quality of the output is really about how you formulate the input, or really what you input into the LLMs, which comes down into a large part to how good your prompts are, how good you feed the model with instructions. So the third part will be about the anatomy of a good prompt. The learning goals for me for this webinar are basically so that at the end of this webinar, you have a good idea about how to install and set up on-premise LLMs. Then the second goal is that you have a good idea how to write effective prompts. So if you use the techniques for prompt engineering, as we say, which we will learn in this webinar, I think you are already ahead of the curve of most other people just prompting, intuitively, interacting intuitively with these LLMs. And the last learning goal is that you understand, hopefully, the power of AI-assisted patent application drafting, and that you will also see where the strengths are, where the reasonable use cases are, and where also the current limitations are. Because, no tool is perfect, and AI, as I said in the beginning, ChatGPT has been published roughly 1.5 years ago, so not so long, and there's really rapid developments. The models are getting better by the week, basically, and new features are added all the time, so it's all an evolving field here. Okay, so let's jump into the first part, intro to Gen AI. So what is generative AI? Actually, so a non-technical definition for practical purposes here is that a generative AI model, or a large language model, an LLM, is basically a piece of software that basically has read lots and lots of text and has learned how words tend to appear in context with other words. That's the training of the LLM. So that's basically what an LLM is. It's not a search engine. It's not a fixed computer program. It's more or less a word guessing machine, let's say. So you give an input to the LLM, and then the LLM reads the input text you give it, and then it just guesses the text that should come next, one word after the other. That's also why, if you've played with ChatGPT already, you can see that when you input a prompt, and then when the response is generated, it really types out word after word. So that's what it really does. It just takes the input string, and then based on this whole corpus of documents it has read, and based on some statistical evaluations of this text corpus, it just guesses the next most likely word in the string, so to say. So it's just a text completion machine. So this sounds quite trivial, and from a conceptual point of view, in some sense, it is. But the point is that because those LLMs have been trained on such a huge, such a vast corpus of input documents, so the models we use, like ChatGPT, they have basically been trained on, the whole internet. So they have basically read, every written text containing the whole human knowledge, so to say. Because they have been trained on such a vast amount of text, these models end up, and even though they only guess the next word, they end up exhibiting very interesting skills. For example, they can really answer questions, they can hold a conversation, they can keep the context in memory, they can interactively talk with you, so to say. They can write in different languages, they can even write code. So those are really, really interesting properties that emerge, so to say, from this mere fact that they have basically seen the whole human knowledge and then can generate new text out of that. The generative AI landscape, basically, I think it's always practical to in terms of patent drafting, or in terms of our application domain, I think it's practical to divide into two main pillars. So on the one hand, we have generic LLMs, and on the other hand, we have commercial patent drafting tools, which are also popping up left and right here. So AI-based patent drafting tool. So on the generic LLM side, we have basically two types. We have, on the one hand, what I call cloud-based LLMs. So those are closed source commercial LLMs hosted by, or provided and hosted by certain companies. So of course, the most prominent example is ChatGPT by OpenAI, but we also have models by other big players, like Google has its own model, which was called BART a long time ago, which is now called Gemini. And there are many more, Claude, things like that. So those are cloud-based, which means they run in the cloud, right, on a server hosted by OpenAI or Google or whoever. And then on the other hand, we have this open source side of LLMs. So there's a big open source community which develops open source LLMs. Popular examples are, for example, Mistral by Mistral AI, which is a French company, as I understand, as a matter of fact. And then we have Meta, who have published a model called Llama. And I think the Llama 3 is the latest version. I think it came out like a week ago, a couple of days ago. So that's really brand new. We had Llama 2 for quite some time now. And I think it was last week, Llama 3 was announced. And also here in the open source world, we have even more variety. We have even more different open source models. So that's the generic LLM side. Generic in that sense that those tools are, LLMs usable for any kind of generative AI use case. Those are, of course, off the shelf, not designed for patent drafting, but they are just, chatbots, so to say. And on the other hand, we have the commercial patent drafting tools. There's a long list. I have just listed some examples here. I've tried out some of them. There are many, many more out there. Those tools typically have a little bit of a different approach. They typically come with let's say, a fixed process, how you have to use them, because most of those tools kind of want to shield you as the user from having to formulate prompts and things like that. So you can basically, in many of those tools, just throw in a set of claims, and then it spits out a complete draft of a patent application using generative AI. Many of those tools use GPT by OpenAI behind the scenes. So in my day-to-day work, I'm not so much of a big fan right now with the commercial tools, because I've been drafting patents for almost 14 years now, and I have my personal approach, I have my personal style, and the way how I want to work, and in which sequence, let's say, I want to generate my patent application. And so I haven't found an off-the-shelf commercial tool which really fulfills all the needs I have. So I had the idea, why not use generic LLMs and try to use those for certain parts of my drafting work. And that's what basically this we will see in this webinar. Cloud-based versus open source LLMs is a decision you have to make when you are selecting the model you want to use, right? Both types of LLMs have their pros and cons. So I would say, at least today, the cloud-based LLMs, like ChatGPT, for example, are generally more powerful than open source LLMs. It's just because of the fact that, I mean, those models run on huge computer server grids in the cloud, right? And so they are very big models, which are then very powerful, of course. Open source models tend to be smaller because, well, if you want to run a model on your own computer, the model is limited by the hardware you have. So the model generally has to be much smaller, and then therefore has a little bit of a limited performance and capabilities. Although I have to say that the whole open source community is very active and is quickly catching up. So when I was starting to look into those, into using LLMs for patent drafting roughly half a year ago, I would say the offline, writing parts of a patent application with ChatGPT was nearly perfect. So the linguistic quality that comes out of ChatGPT is really astonishing, really great. And at that time, roughly half a year ago, when I first tried open source LLMs like Llama 2 at that time, the quality was really subpar. So it was really, for me, not usable in a real patent application. But things have quickly changed. So I would say right now, those open source LLMs are really catching up. And especially now Llama 3, if you look at the public benchmarks which are around, Llama 3 is said to be the most powerful open source LLM, and it is almost as good, and also already has beaten apparently things like Open AI's model in certain aspects. So let's see how long this difference in terms of the power, the performance of LLMs will hold in the future. Of course, a big advantage of cloud-based LLMs is that you don't require powerful hardware. All you need is a browser with which you can access the cloud-based model. Cons of using a cloud-based model is that on the one hand, that's the biggest issue, I would say. You don't have control over the data you put in. Of course, everything you put into the ChatGPT interface is sent somewhere over the internet. And if you are dealing as a patent attorney like me with highly sensitive data, you have to decide for yourself if you want to risk that there would be some kind of data breach, or even the possibility that the data gets publicly available, which could then have, of course, drastic results for your patent application which you are drafting, right? So that's maybe the biggest issue, I would say, the confidentiality issue. And then another downside of cloud-based LLMs is that, they are constantly further developed, right? New features are added all the time. So once you are in a position that you have, kind of worked out your own set of private prompts you are using from time to time, it might be that with a new model update, suddenly your prompts don't work anymore as expected, right? Because you don't have control over which version of the model you are using, basically. On the other hand, open source LLMs have the big advantage, of course, that they are safe in terms of confidentiality. So you can install them on your own computer, and everything you put in there stays on your computer. You can even run those models without any internet connection. It's really local on your own device, so there's no confidentiality issue involved here. And also another advantage for me is that these models are then kind of stable. They do not change unless you install a new version yourself. But if you don't do that, the model stays as it is on your computer, and it will probably give the same results to your prompts unless you tweak the parameters or update the model or things like that. And as I said, the downside of open source LLMs is that they are generally less powerful than open source LLMs. I would say, as I said, the difference is becoming smaller by the minute, basically. But we will have to see where the developments are leading here, right? So now, how to install a local LLM without coding? As I said, it's really no rocket science. Everyone can do it, basically. So basically, you need two things to run an LLM locally on your computer. You need a model, of course, and you also need, let's say, a user interface to interact with the model. The model itself is just, let's say, a data structure in that sense. It's just a set of weights which have been trained in a particular manner. So you can't do anything with the model itself. You need some kind of user interface, and there are different alternatives. But I mean, the most convenient one is, of course, using a chatbot like ChatGPT, the web interface. And there are different tools out there, also open source tools, which you can just download for free from the internet. Two of the tools I'm using right now are, on the one hand, GPT for all, which, let me quickly show you, is just, if you go to gptforall.io, that's the website. There you can download this chatbot client for Windows, for Mac, and even for Linux. And exactly, so that's GPT for all. And another tool I'm using sometimes is called Ollama, ollama.com, which is also a chatbot, but this doesn't have a graphical user interface, but it runs inside the terminal. So if you're more of the hacker type, so to say, if you like working with the command line interface, you can use Ollama. Most of the time these days I use GPT for all because it has a graphical user interface. So maybe let me show you. I'm just starting up my own GPT for all. So that's it. That's the chatbot, so to say. And then inside this user interface, inside GPT for all, you can then install all sorts of local models you can think of, basically. So there's a list of models you can download. You can see that I already downloaded Llama 3 here, but there's all sorts of other open source models and also interfaces to ChatGPT even. You could even download any model from Hugging Face by searching here. So in this configuration here, I've downloaded Llama 3 already. A model like that is a couple gigabytes large. So this one, Llama 3, has 4.34 gigabytes in size. So you need some storage space and also some RAM to run them. But I'm running this on MacBook Pro here. So yeah, basic computer, basic consumer computer, and you will see that it runs quite smoothly. We will look into an example later on, right? So that's the two things you need, and all you need basically to get started. You need a user interface. Maybe if you're starting out, maybe try GPT for all because it's a really nice graphical user interface, and then you can pick a model. Right now, most of the time, I'm using either Llama 3 or Mistral, the French company model, because Mistral is also, it's very hyped in the community and it's has very good benchmarks. Okay, then let's look into how to draft patents with using such a model. So as I said, in the end, this these kinds of LLMs are not commercial patent drafting tools, but they are just chatbots like ChatGPT, exactly the same, basically. So it really depends on what you put in, then you will get something out. So if you look at a simple example, maybe if we have an invention, as an example, if we have this patent claim here, which is directed to here a software product comprising a machine learning language model configured to assist a user in writing patent applications, wherein the language model is arranged within a confidential computing environment. So that would basically be a patent claim you might want to have if you are developing one of those commercial patent drafting tools, basically. So what you could think of is just to write a naive prompt, let's say, to query the model and tell the model, write me the background section of a patent application for the following invention, and then you just put in the claim, right? So we can just maybe try this out to see what the output would be. So I'm starting GPT-4All again, and then I'm loading the model here, Llama 3. This takes a while for the model to load, because as I said, it's like 4 gigabytes. Yeah, it's already loaded now. And now I could just say as a prompt, write the background section for a patent application for the following invention. And then I'm just pasting the claim in there, right? And you can see that it's lightning fast. So there's basically no difference to ChatGPT, and all of this now runs on my computer locally, right? Inside GPT-4All using the Llama 3 model. And here's the output of the model. It says, here's a draft of the background section of your patent application. Background, and then here you have it, basically. So that's basically how you use those kinds of tools. Very easy if you have used ChatGPT. It's really, really easy to use those offline tools as well. There's basically, in principle, there's no difference over using ChatGPT. However, if you are using such a, let's say, naive, intuitive prompt, you just dump the patent claim in there and say, well, write me a background section. Yeah, the results are mixed. So I would say, I mean, if we look at it, the good thing is that, well, it looks on first glance, it looks like a real patent application, right? So linguistically, it's written very nicely. And I think it's a good style, a typical patent application style. So from the linguistic tone side of things, it's quite good already for a patent application. Typically also it starts, this is an older example I had, but with the same prompt here with a slide with Mistral in that case. So here Mistral in this example also started nicely outlining, the overall topic associated with this claim. Then it provided already some nice context in the second paragraph. It here talked about the advent of AI and ML, things like that. But then with this naive prompt, you really quickly reach the limits of those models, I would say, because then it suddenly got off topic. It was talking about things like hardware-based isolation, so things, I don't know, which are not really part of this invention. So it started to hallucinate, as we call it. That's one problem with LLMs. Sometimes if your prompt is too generic, the LLM just starts to guess and starts to write what it thinks is a good answer, but sometimes it even makes up things which you don't want to have in your output. And then one of the other big disadvantage of this generic short prompt in this example is that in the last paragraph, Mistral even started then to talk about the inventive solution, which I generally don't want to have in my background sections, because the background section in a patent application is more for setting up the story, creating a nice pedestal on which the invention can then sit on top of. But I personally, I don't want to talk about the inventive solution in the background section. I just want to have the discussion of the general field and the disadvantages of the prior art, and then a formulation of the objective technical problem. So that's what I didn't like about this output here. But then on the other hand, it's probably not the model's fault, but it's the fault of this very, very short prompt. And I mean, if you input the patent claim into the prompt, you cannot really expect that the model will automatically know that you don't want to reveal the inventive solution yet here, right? So in the end, what you need is you have to have a little bit of expertise and experience in how to really provide a better input into those models. And for example, that's just as an example now here quickly. This is a prompt I use. So this is a bit longer. This is more elaborate. It has certain building blocks, which I will talk about in a minute. And if you use prompts like that, you will get far better results. So talking about how such a prompt looks, that's then the second part basically of this webinar, the anatomy of a good prompt, because from what I've learned is that there are basically 6 building blocks for effective prompt engineering. And those building blocks are the task, the role, the context, the format, the tone, and examples. The first 4 of those are, let's say, the essential building blocks, and the other ones are more or less optional, but we will have a look at those individually now. So first of all, the task. The task in a prompt basically specifies the precise action you want to have. So the question is, what should the AI do? So, of course, a prompt without a clear task will hardly create any meaningful response, because if you don't tell the model what to do, it will just hallucinate what it thinks is best, but that might not be what you want the model to do. So a good practice is to start the task sentence in your prompt always with a clear action verb, so that the LLM really knows, okay, so this is what I should do now. So something like write, or make a list of, or create an outline for. So really a precise action verb, so that you tell the LLM exactly what to do. Be very specific. So you could write something like in my example, write the background section of a European patent application. OpenAI even recommends to state the task at the beginning of your prompt, or at the end, or even both, so that it's really clear to the model what it should do, right? So the second part of a good prompt is the role. The role is very helpful to define, let's say, the perspective and the level of expertise and let's say the identity or the character the AI should take on. Because as I said, these kinds of models have been trained basically on the whole human knowledge, so they can act as all sorts of experts in different fields. So you can really tell the model who it should be. So what I always do in my prompts is write something like, you are a European patent attorney specialized in the field of, and then the field of the invention, for example. So this kind of directs the model into which hat it should wear, so to say. The context then ensures that the response you are generating with the model is based on relevant additional information. So you basically have to ask yourself, what does the AI need to know? What information should it chew on to generate the response? Because without the right information, it can only guess an answer, right? Which normally leads to bad results. So you can be very specific here. We can come back to my more elaborate prompt example maybe later on to see what I give as context information here. And then that's very important in my experience, the format. You can really dictate to the model a desired structure of your response. So how should the AI write? So if you are trying to write the background section of a patent application, as in my example here, you as a patent attorney will probably have a very specific idea of how that section should be structured, right? And so a good way, good practice is not to leave it up to the LLM to make up some structure, but really to say to the LLM how you want your answer, the background section of the patent application in that example, how you want that to be structured. So things like write at least 4 very detailed paragraphs, first describe the existing solutions, examples, then describe why they are not optimal, things like that. So here you would really give the model instructions how it should structure its output, and then step by step. This is really helpful if you are really clear and specific here. So I think these are the 4 fundamental things you should have in every prompt: the role, the task, the context information, and the format. The other 2 are in many cases optional, so you can specify the desired tone of your output. The tone directs the language to its desired style. So the question is basically, how should the AI sound like, right? So in terms of patent drafting, in my experience, this is oftentimes not really needed, because if you use the other building blocks like the role, for example, if you tell the model to act as a European patent attorney, it in my experience, automatically adapts the style suitable for a patent application. So that's maybe less critical here. And then the 6th building block of an effective prompt is examples. So in some cases, it makes sense to provide model answers to the model. So positive examples, how you want something to look like. Not necessary for every prompt, but sometimes also this helps, right? So maybe coming back to my example, let's look at that in some more detail now. That's really the prompt format I'm using in my practice to write the background section of a patent application. So it starts out with, you are a European patent attorney specialized in the technical field of computer software in that case. So that's the role. Then the clear task definition, right? Your task is to write the background section of a European patent application based on the provided facts below. So I'm telling the model to use the facts here. And this is the context information I'm giving the model. So I'm giving, when I'm drafting the background section with AI, I'm giving the model information about the technical field, about the prior art solutions here. And I already give to the model, let's say, a short bullet point list, so to say, of shortcomings of the prior art. And then I formulate the objective of the invention, because I want the LLM not to guess anything, but I want to really, I want the LLM to pick up on that objective and work this into the background section. So that's the context information. And then we have the other formats, the other building blocks, format and tone. That's basically the 2nd and the 3rd paragraph here. So that's what I typically use here. I say, strictly adhere to the following style guide. Strictly, I'm saying to really exclude that the LLM is too, let's say, creative in terms of the format. I say, write at least 600 words, write in a professional and factual tone, provide an illustrative and compelling narrative, base your response strictly on the provided facts below, and so on, right? So you can really tell the model how to deal with the context information. And then here, that's maybe the real format information here. I tell the model to construct a compelling narrative that naturally flows from a description of the technical field to the existing prior art solutions, then to their shortcomings, and then to the objective addressed by the invention. And then I also say in this prompt, make sure not to mention how the invention solves the objective, because that was the main disadvantage of the example with the short, naive prompt I was giving in the beginning. So that's my typical my real life go-to prompt for drafting the background section of a European patent application. And remember, the first 3 paragraphs are really fixed. So I just copy and paste those every time, and then the only thing I have to do is fill in these information about the technical field, the prior art solution, the shortcomings, and the objective, and then the LLM generates for me the whole background section. So that's one example how you can use generic LLMs. By the way, this kind of prompt, of course, not only works for offline LLMs, but works the same way for ChatGPT as well. But you have to decide for yourself, of course, if you can use ChatGPT or generally a cloud-hosted LLM for patent drafting. Right? Okay, so that's just one example now. We're already out of time, I see. Yeah, that's basically a small glimpse into how I use these kinds of LLMs for in my patent drafting work. So last slide, I hear that the moderators are already wanting to stop me, I think, because we have the Q&A then in a minute. Last slide here. So I think as a summary, currently LLMs are working quite great for the textual part of a patent application. For example, for drafting the background section, as I showed you. Also for drafting things like the summary section, with examples of the claim features and technical definitions, and also for brainstorming technical advantages of certain claim features. Those models are really great already today. A big point I'm curious about in the future, because it doesn't really work right now, at least I didn't get it to work to a satisfying degree, is the whole multimodal aspect. So beyond pure text, right? So if you think about, of course, you could also use generative AI to either take patent drawings you provided and then generate figure descriptions for your patent application, or the other way around. You could, of course, also think about using generative AI to generate patent drawings, but that's, I think, something for the future. So I didn't manage to generate really suitable patent drawings with AI so far. Maybe I just don't have the right prompt. I don't know, but yeah, that's what I'm still working on in my day-to-day work. So yeah, okay. So yeah, that was basically a quick, very quick run down of this exciting topic. I also have another seminar where we go into much more detail into all of those aspects, so we can stay up to date here on the website if you want. And that's basically what I had prepared. And I don't know if you have questions.
Yes. Thank you, Bastian. It was a quick but very deep, and still a very good glance of how we can use AI in a good and effective way. Thanks a lot. So I see we have some questions. For example, you talk a lot about generic models such as GPT and Llama, which are not made for patent drafting. But do you know models that are really tailored for patent drafting? And the question of Anastasia was even more specific, which are any models good for writing about biotech or chemistry?
I'm not aware of really generic LLMs. So basically what these models are made for is that they are generic LLMs in the sense that they have been set up by someone and then they have been trained with all sorts of input data. As I said, basically all the models we are using here have been trained, using all sorts of openly available data like, Wikipedia and data from the internet. So they have a very good general understanding of the world, and they do quite a good job also for, let's say, in the sense of a brainstorming body for typical normal, I don't know, mechanic patent applications, even for software inventions, it's nice to have such a generic LLM as a brainstorming buddy. But if you have a really, really specific technical field, what you could do is, in principle, is take one of those models and, let's say, fine-tune it. That's the technical term. So you would retrain the model with additional domain-specific documents in the end. So in principle, that is possible. So in that way, you could either fine-tune the model to a specific technical domain or to a different language or whatever, or maybe even to, I don't know, a specific style of patent applications for a certain field. If you input just enough training data. So that's in principle doable, but I'm not aware of any model out there which would have been specifically fine-tuned for patent purposes. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not aware of anyone who has done that still. Maybe I will do it at some point, but haven't gotten around to that.
Last week on our trademark session, we talked about also how to write, for example, a trademark claim or application, and we used ChatGPT for this.
Mhm.
And ChatGPT, there is a feature when you can select some data and kind of fine tune it with a specific data you want to select. Is it something possible on the tools you presented for on-premise LLM to have?
Yeah, you can also, I can quickly show you maybe at least in principle. So what you can do, for example, in GPT for all is you can define, so there's one add-on in GPT for all which you have to install, which is called, let me see, just a minute, where is it? This here, it's called bird, and this, if you install that in GPT for all, you can have the model of your choice, for example, like Llama 3. You can have it interact with local documents. So if you have installed that add-on, you can define here certain document collections. You can just input a path to local documents on your hard drive, and then the model can query those documents. So in that sense, you can kind of enhance the model with domain-specific knowledge. But I haven't tried this out in practice yet. But in principle, I think that's a feature to look at.
Very, very cool information. Thanks for sharing. We also have a question about languages. So do the LLM you use work as good in other language, for example, German or any other language? Did you try them?
Not as good, unfortunately. I've tried it out in German. So of course you could, what you could just do is, let's make a simple example. I'm copying let's try this out real quick with Llama 3. So I've loaded Llama 3. I'm inputting my standard prompt, and then I just say answer in German. So let's see what comes out here. And in case any one of you can read German, so it says, I would say on first glance, it's okay. It's maybe not perfect patent German. I would say in English, these kinds of models are really, really perfect. So it's really, really nicely polished patent English. This output here in German, I'm not sure. I wouldn't use it in practice, I think. So, but this is then the Llama 3 model off the shelf, right? There is also, for the German case, for example, something like someone in the open source community just took the Mistral model and then fine-tuned it on German documents. So you could use for German purposes this German model. Results are, I would say, 80-90% maybe, but not as good as a German native speaker would formulate it. And for French, I cannot judge that because my French is very limited. But at least I know there are many fine-tuned French versions of models out there. So you would just have to try it out.
Yeah, I heard there was also a specific model that was only trained on the French data. It's called Croissant. I don't know if you heard of it. Not specific for patents, but only trained on French data.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a question about prompt automation in itself. So, did you manage to find a way to only write the specific data for your inputs, but not having to rewrite the prompt, the whole specific guidance?
Yeah. I don't have an automated solution for that in my practice. So what I do is just I have a small collection of my prompts pre-written, right? Like the one I showed you, and then I just do copy and paste. I just copy and paste the prompt skeleton, so to say, into the user interface, and then I add the task specific information. So it's just a copy and paste solution right now.
Yeah, I guess it's still a quite efficient relation of how you would write traditionally a patent claim. I mean, a simple copy paste, only 2 seconds. We also had a question about how do you evaluate when it's less powerful, and is it like in terms of the number of words it can view or read, or is it like the accuracy of the data of the output? And I have a complementary question. So how do you benchmark the output you get when for a patent claim, for example? How would you compare from a traditionally written patent claim and compare it to the one that would come from a LLM?
Mm. I'm just judging that in terms of my own experience, right? In terms of how much I like the output and how little revision I have to do. So there's no structured way to that. I always try to, right now I have my private set of prompts, which are quite stable, but the way to that was that I was just always enhancing and always trying to tweak the prompt just a little bit and to observe how the output of the model changes until I came up with a certain prompt structure for which I liked the output, right, in terms of quality of the output.
And so, how do you have an idea of how much time would you save for one patent drafting, for example, or is it something very hard to measure? Or
yeah, I don't have reliable, really structured data on that because saving time is not really my main focus here. My main focus is more like, in that sense, saving the time for the less intellectually challenging tasks, like writing the background section. I mean, it's in many cases when I'm writing a patent application, I get the invention disclosure document. I talk to the inventors, and then once I've understood the invention, I start with writing the claims myself because that's a really legally important part. I always write that by hand. And then once you have the claims, for example, the background section is more or less, footwork, which is a little bit more boring. And so for that, I want to use those kinds of tools, but not really with the end goal of saving time, but more so than I can take that time and invest it more on the intellectually more challenging tasks, like thinking one round more about the claims, talking 1 hour more with the inventors, right? So in that sense, I think using those tools can enhance the quality. But of course, you can also try to optimize, to minimize the total time. But I don't have reliable data on that. As I said, right now, the prompts I'm using and the models I'm using, they are really only good, in my experience, for the textual part. So you can save a lot of time there. But then you still have to write to decide on the figures and things like that, right? So there's always manual efforts involved, of course.
Okay. Well, thank you. It was very complete. I guess there is no more question. I have one. It's not about writing patent claim, but do you have any other use of AI tools, for example, for patent clearance? Because since it's trained on like all the patents claimed in the US, for example, you can like very easily have knowledge of what's already been patented, and so do you use it like for this kind of use?
No, for patent clearance things, I don't use it actually. No. For so beyond patent drafting, what I sometimes use these kinds of tools is for chatting with prior art documents. Actually, so if I get an office action back from the patent office, right, with certain prior art cited, there is tools. One of the tools is called chatpdf.com. That's a platform, browser-based, where you can just input a PDF. So I would just upload the prior art document. There's no confidentiality issues involved there because the prior art document is publicly available anyway, right? So you can upload it to chatpdf.com, and then you have a chat interface where you can really query the document. You can ask questions like, does this document show this and that feature or something like that? And then the model will read the document and will respond and will also point you to certain passages of the document where it found the answer. So that's quite helpful in patent prosecution. It's called ChatPDF.
Okay, ChatPDF. I'll look at it. And well, thanks again, Bastian. It was very complete presentation, and we really enjoyed having you again. We're really glad. And yes, I think there is no more question. I'll put the link to your website again in the chat. So if you want to dive even deeper with the Bastian, check on his website. And thanks again. We will host a new webinar on May 16th. It will be our final of this series consecrated to copyright using AI tools in a copyright domain, and also how to use AI tools in a compliant way in relation to copyright that can pre-exist. So thanks again, Bastian, and thanks all our viewers for being here. I guess you had a good time.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I hope this was helpful. So I hope it's sparked your interest into this exciting technology. Thanks for having me.